Okay, it says it's recording. So those of you that wanted to know whether it was recording, it is, and will be available on the Pacific Western Region website, along with the other webinars that we have done. For those of you who may not know me, and I'm not sure that fits anybody that's on this call right now at this time. I'm finishing up my 15th year as district executive in the Pacific Southwest District and 40 years as a Unitarian Universalist minister. And I first started working or getting interested in the multi-site congregations back in 2001. Attended some seminars, 2002, 2003, wrote a paper on it, which we will send out to you at this next week sometime if you'd like to see that, which sort of gave my overview at the time. I updated it in 2010 when I ran a weekend workshop in Southern California, where we had not only an all-day session on workshop, but we visited one of the main multi-site congregation leaders in North San Diego County. And then on a Sunday morning, we visited with First Church San Diego that had begun a multi-site congregation as well. So I encourage you all to visit multi-sites in your area just to get a feel for what is possible and what people are doing. And that's really how I learned. I worked with people and did workshops with folks, and have become sort of a coach to congregations looking at that, moving in this direction, which is what led us to want to do this, what is now a 2-session webinar. So as we start this evening, hoping Stan gets back on, we're going to start with a chalice lighting. And one of the things I realized was that when I was looking for things to read for an opening, I realized all my stuff was already over at our new place, either in boxes or on bookshelves in California, and I didn't have my usual selection. So I sort of looked in a box that still had a few things that I had dug through. One of the things we're doing is downsizing, and I found a wide range of sort of historic things that I have kept. And I found a little pamphlet from the early 1900s written by Reverend Maxwell Savage. It's called Unitarian Answers. And it's got a range of questions and answers, around things like the Bible and Jesus and et cetera. But the last one was belief in churches. And it says, do you believe in churches? And then he goes on to answer that. So I thought it might be an interesting piece just to read from about 1906, I think. It turned out when I looked Maxwell Savage up, he was secretary of the Southern Pacific Conference of Unitarian Churches. He was a minister in Redlands. He dedicated a new building there in 1906. And interestingly, for what we're talking about tonight is the growth of Unitarian Universalism and the spread of it through multi-sites. That congregation no longer exists. There's one nearby in Riverside, but the congregation in Redlands did not make it beyond the mid part of the 20th century. But this is what Reverend Savage had to say about his belief in churches. Churches have their faults for the obvious reason that people have their faults, and the churches of this world have to be made up of people who live in this world. Yet churches should be those agencies which, by their very atmosphere, spirit, and teaching, should serve the whole of humanity and not the partial human. Their reason for being is to seek and find and give a spiritual and moral interpretation of life, which, in line with evidence of scientific truth, dares in the spirit of high adventure to look out and point out and go out beyond in the direction in which it points. Only thus can people gain purpose and meaning to their lives, which are ultimately safe from the accidents of living and receive the immediate spiritual bread, which can sustain them and keep them sane on their journey through life. So I think that's... for me, why as we light this chalice, why I think that multi-site congregations are an answer to help bring some sanity, and that is more locations for Unitarian Universalism in the future. And so what we're going to do tonight is go through the broad sense of what is a multi-site congregation. Next Tuesday night, we'll be talking more specifically about the Unitarian Universalist models that are out there, the diversity in those models that are out there, and even show you some slides from some of the processes that they went through to create. So tonight is the overview. Next week is the specific Unitarian Universalist things. So, did we skip? I guess right. So in the chat box, can you tell us what your role in the congregation is, and briefly, if you want to state your interest in multi-site? So go for it. We'll wait a few seconds for you to do, those of you that want to do that. I can say as you're doing that I know that the folks from Las Vegas have been talking about multi-site now for at least a half a dozen years, living in a community that is as spread out as Las Vegas is and having basically one congregation. I know Santa Barbara has been talking about the same thing, being a congregation that is sort of landlocked in that they don't really have much space to expand on, and they're looking to connect with some creating a second site 30 miles away. Nika, I don't know. I know that they were talking about possibly having started it, and I don't know whether they have or not in Santa Barbara about it. And so thank you all. You can all read what everybody else has written there. Welcome, Stan. First Portland is certainly one of the congregations that fits the similar category to Santa Barbara in that you're sort of landlocked. You've expanded greatly on the block that you are there in Portland, but this model will give you an opportunity to look beyond that and see what else might happen. So thank you all for responding to that. The way we're going to do this is I don't mind being interrupted for questions. We're just going to go through a series of slides, and I'll be talking over the slides about this perspective, this particular model of congregational expansion, and as Ian just wrote, they have 3 sites right now in their 3 campuses, and they're looking at how to move beyond just the small numbers that have started those into larger, and we'll deal with some of that this evening. So here we go. What is a multi-site? One church meeting in multiple locations, like Las Vegas has started doing with their 2 sites, one south and one sort of northwest of where the church has been in the past. And so one church meeting in multiple locations, or different rooms on the same campus. Many of the congregations that have moved to multi-site have moved to a model of having the services piped into a second site. But unlike the past where we were doing this as overflow, it's an intentional move, and mainly it's a more relaxed atmosphere in that meeting room in the same campus. Or as North Coast in San Diego has done, they have moved into a industrial complex, and they have in essence 5 or 6 sanctuaries on that campus. And so on Saturday night and Sunday morning, you can go to any one of those. You get the same sermon no matter which sanctuary you go into, but you have a different style for the rest of the service. And that's one of the other differences between this model and the older model of where congregations would sort of pipe things into an extra room in the church building, in that the only thing that really is shared, whether it's multiple locations or whether it's on the same campus, multiple rooms on the same campus, is the only thing that's really shared is the sermon. The rest is all done in the locale, and so that makes it different. This has expanded to such a degree that some of the larger congregations have expanded beyond their region, even into different cities and states. I'm not sure that's a model that we're ready for as Unitarian Universalists, but certainly the first 2 are things that our congregations have moved into in this country. So again, another difference between multi-site and either starting a spin-off or doing something else is the multi-site church shares a common vision, budget, and leadership and board. This is one of the things that excited me about that, is looking at this model, because I have spent 40 years looking at ways to grow congregations. I've been trained in everything that the UUA has come out around growth models over those 40 years, have been consultants with churches on that model. And, one of our biggest models has been to spin off another congregation or to start a fellowship in a more isolated area where there hasn't been anything in the past. And, we may throw a few dollars at it to begin with, but we basically wish you luck and you're on your own. This model is different in that you aren't on your own. You aren't even creating a new budget or a new board, or necessarily even new committees, although there may be committees that deal specifically with a particular site and some late leadership there locally. You're basically part of one congregation. And I think this is the thing that really excited me, because this showed a way of supporting supporting the growth of Unitarian Universalism in a way that we really haven't done in the past. It gives us that opportunity to really use the resources of congregations that are already there, already in existence, and grow Unitarian Universalism in areas that we are not currently connected to. So, technology is one of the ways that they do this. This is from one of the larger multi-site congregations, where you can see they are projecting what they call the teaching opportunity, what we would call the sermon, on the screen. And so they broadcast. And there are a number of ways that this is done. And part of my problem when I do slides like this is I don't know whether I've got slides in the future that are going to prompt me to say the same thing over again, but we'll deal with that. There are about 3 different models of using video that are out there right now. One is that you use a DVD to record a particular sermon. In the larger multi-site places, they will record a sermon on Saturday night and then bring it to some of their off-site locations for Sunday morning directly into a DVD player. And so that's one model. Some UU congregations that have used this model will have a sermon on Sunday morning, and then they will take that to the other site on the next Sunday to be used there on the following Sunday. And so they get the same sermons, just not in the same week. The other way is the internet live streaming. Live streaming is probably the most complex of the models that are happening, and so it's it depends on your internet connection, your bandwidth, and all of that to enable it to really happen and not have glitches in it. I've visited some of the multi-site congregations that use this, and even some of those larger congregations where I know they have the latest up-to-date technology. There are glitches that happen in this. The other model of using the technology that is newer over the last couple of years is the satellite technology. I haven't had time to really dig deeper into it, but what I've learned from people I've talked to and the reading I've done is that the costs of this have actually come down, so that those that are using satellite technology believe that the overall cost is no different than live streaming. You're spending money differently in at different times for different types of technology that you need, but those that are doing the satellite now believe firmly that the overall cost does not really make much difference on that. So it'll be interesting. I'm going to try to explore that a little more and maybe visit with somebody that has moved into the satellite model. Okay. So deeper definitions now. Short for multi-site church, one church in multiple locations. It's considered multi-site if it has more than one worship venue. As we said, that can be on the same campus, or that can be somewhere else if you want, another location, someplace 30 miles away or someplace even blocks away. Campus. The campus definition is that any church ministry is considered a campus. So a multi-site church may have several campuses. And so when you hear that term used, we're not talking about a college. We're obviously talking about the campuses and the various sites that are happening for a multi-site. Branch or satellite is one that is clearly off-site campus. It's not on the same campus as the congregation that began this. One of the things that we struggle with, and one of the things I think that they learned at First Church San Diego, is not to call the congregation, the initial congregation, the initial site, the mother church or whatever. It's trying to make sure that we're talking about one congregation with multiple campuses and multiple worship venues, and talk like that. When they started the second site in First San Diego, they gave it a slightly different name, and that created confusion and problems. And so now they are calling it, First Unitarian Universalist Church, South Bay, or the location where it is. And so that's one of the things that we've learned. Okay. So we're learning here that First Portland which has two sanctuaries. That's part of the expansion they did more than a decade ago, I think now. Recorded the first service and showed it later in a second sanctuary, but they were running for a while 3 services, and now they're back to 2. But then this is an example of in the language of multi-site would be a congregation that is multi-site because they have more than one worship venue on their campus, and so First Portland fits that definition already. Venue is a location where a worship service for adults is held, such as the church's fellowship hall, gym, chapel, and multiple locations on the existing campus. Yeah, so Las Vegas is saying they have also changed from to calling themselves a congregation with 3 campuses. They used to have different names, and therefore, in some ways, different identities for the other 2 campuses. And so that's good that you've moved in that direction, because that's one of the things that we learned did cause confusion if you weren't doing the one congregation with multiple campuses. Strategic partners. This is again something that finding somebody to work with. Some of these congregations are working with the Y in order to put a Sunday service in a Y building, but also work with the Y on doing other programming for youth and young adults and such. So that's the point of the strategic partnership. And so that's a newer model that a fewer of the multi-site congregations actually have going. So I put this up here just to say that there is a starter kit that was put out by the congregation in North San Diego, North Coast, and they have a training network that does a number of things. They also do small group ministry stuff, work and leading in that. But they turned this out, 5 or 6 years ago. So some of it's probably a little old as far as the technology conversations in here. But the thing I liked about it is that they weren't just talking to you about it. They were showing their site. Their technology person was talking about their options that they use and showing that. And there's 5 DVDs in here. I'm looking at my copy that I have with me. And so there's 5 copies in there. I'm not going to say run out and buy it, because you can also get information from some of the books that will be in a bibliography. We'll let you send out to you at some point. But just want to let you know that there is this one resource that isn't inexpensive, but if you're really getting seriously into this mode and want to look at it, this is available out there. I actually went to their website yesterday when Laurie and I were doing our tech run to make sure they were still selling it, and they are. here are the models that are basically out there, approaches to multi-site that people have identified who have done the research on that. The regional campus model, which means having multiple campuses, sort of like what Las Vegas is doing, having more than one campus, therefore more than multiple worship venues. The video venue model is, some of these merge with each other in many ways. The video venue model is where you do use video, and at various times in the movement of building multi-site congregations, the video venue has been anywhere from 40 to 60% of the multi-site congregations have used video. The teaching team model is one that's gotten more popular more recently, and the percentage of congregations doing this has increased. This basically, again, teaching team is the more traditional evangelical church's language for a ministry team. And so they would have multiple people, therefore they could have different people at the different campuses at the same time. Obviously, with that model, you are getting differing sermons. What some of the congregations that follow this model do is that they will, again, say they have three different campuses and three different ministers, and so the ministers rotate over 3 weeks among those three different models. And a lot of times they will use a month or 2 month long series of sermons on a particular subject too, and rotate it around. The low risk model is a model that basically means not spending for all of the video money, not having a larger ministry team, but using volunteers and trying it out with some other sites. And that's sort of the model, I think, that we would say Las Vegas has been following, with only one minister and then volunteers working with the minister on the other campuses. So that's the category I guess I would put you in right now, is that low risk model. And then the partnership model, again, is partnering with other nonprofits to find places to do ministry and to share maybe some of the ministry, as with the Y programs that are done. So again, any questions, write them down there. Otherwise, I'm going to keep rambling through this, and we'll see how far we get through these slides tonight. But I don't want to go too fast that you're not getting. So even if you need me to repeat something or didn't quite understand what I'm saying, please send us a note, and we will deal with that. Okay, like I said, a lot of times when I start rolling on this, I start repeating myself. So I think this is we've talked enough about the variety of ways in which to do the video and the variety of ways in which they are doing it now. I just want to go back though and reiterate the fact that what the video model offers is basically just the sermon, videocast sermons, whether it is a DVD, a live streaming, or satellite. That this particular model enables the people who attend worship at the other campus or at the other venue to lead the worship and to do everything else in the service at that particular site. So it need not be the same. Like I said, the North Coast congregation in San Diego that I have visited numerous times and taken people to see will have on their main campus will have a gospel service where gospel music is used and gospel groups play, a rock service, a country service, a family-friendly one, and so that they will have varying worship styles at the different things. The regional campus model is one that we are looking at. I think more of our congregations are looking at this, and they're looking at it in a couple of different ways. Not just going out and starting a different site themselves, but the regional model, and we'll talk more about that, I think, next week, because this is a model that our congregation in Houston has followed, and that is a model where existing small congregations that are struggling will connect with a more stable congregation and become one congregation with multiple campuses. And that's a model that I know a number of congregations across the UUA are looking at as a way of really strengthening the support for smaller groups and not leaving them out there on their own. Again, this is a model that makes it easier in some ways if you're large enough to have a team that you can work with on the different campuses. And certainly it's a model that a couple of our larger congregations are looking at, but by and large for most of our Unitarian Universalist congregations, it would not work because we don't have that many larger congregations with multiple staff with the ability to do this, to be there. Partnership. Again, this is, as it says here, it's beyond just renting a space at a nonprofit, but it's working with them in doing outreach into the community, being connected to that area of the community. Okay. And again, here's the low risk, low fire, because of the simplicity of the programming, experimenting with the locations, and a lot of congregations will start with this model and then they'll move more into one of the other models with staff or with the video. Okay, this is a couple of years old now, but it gives you a sense of and again, obviously, if you try to add this up, it comes to greater than 100% because obviously some of the congregations are doing multiple aspects of this. But at this point, 62% of the congregations that were out there were using the regional campus model. 38% were video venues. There's a while this increased this past year up to about 50%. But what I've read just this past couple of weeks is there's a new report that's coming out in March that they haven't really released much of it, but one of their teasers is that the teaching team model has increased beyond this 24%. So we'll have to wait and see what that is. Low risk is 15%, and the partnership is 7%. So obviously, the three that most congregations are working with is the regional campus, the video venues, and the teaching team models are the ones that the great majority of congregations are using as they've moved into this. Okay, what are the advantages of this particular model? Assist in reaching friends and family unwilling to travel great distances. So, in some parts of the country, this is a real issue, is that people won't, cross county, city lines, county lines, whatever, don't want to go more. I mean, there's been studies that have basically shown people don't really want to drive more than 30 minutes, to go to a congregation on Sunday. And in some ways, depending on where you live and what the traffic patterns are like, that's even that number is lower. And so this allows you to reach out again using Las Vegas because I know it as a model. They like a lot of Western cities are just spread out. Unlike the Eastern cities which built up, our Western cities, are much more spread out. And so, and Las Vegas has been until the downturn in the last few years was one of the fastest growing urban areas in the whole country. And so they now, rather than just a sort of central Las Vegas area, cover what I would say about 50, 60 miles from the southeast to the northwest, and in that setting. And so that is a wide range of communities that have grown up here. And so that their desire to move into some multi-site has been generated by this. I know the Santa Barbara, when I was talking to the senior minister there a couple of years ago about this model, we're talking about possibly doing something up in Solvang, which again is about 30 miles northwest of Santa Barbara, and having a second site up there because they have people that come down to Santa Barbara occasionally or somewhat regularly and do that drive. But we're looking for something. Okay, it brings together the best aspects of the larger churches and the smaller churches. It allows all of the campuses to really have the same resources, um, whether that's ministry, whether that's board, whether that's financial resources. So we're not spinning off a group that's sort of struggling on its own, but you have that. But again, by having multiple sites, you have smaller groups. And one of the things we hear in our Unitarian Universalist congregations often when we're trying to talk to congregations about their commitment to growing is how much do you want to grow? Where do you want to grow? In numbers. And the biggest battle I've always seen is that congregations tend not to want to grow way beyond where they are now. This allows a congregation in an area where the population is there to have smaller groups and smaller congregations, smaller worship groups, but still have the resources of the larger congregation. So it's I just think for us, it really is a great model, and brings great possibilities. Increases the total number of available seats. Again, a lot of times what we end up doing if we're trying to start a second site or spin off another group is we end up having to rent space, but we can only get in at 1 p.m. or I know the Sedona congregation, which is just north of me here in Prescott. For years, they were renting space, but the services were like at 1 or 2. They did rent from a church for a while, but that church wouldn't let them in until after their main service was over, even though they were using a second room in their main building. And so at that time, I think they were maybe meeting at 11:30 or noon. They finally made a deal with a local synagogue that had emerged in Sedona, and now worshiping at 10:30 on Sunday morning. And within months of moving to that 10:30 on Sunday morning, they had doubled the numbers of people that they were putting in the seats. And so I think our experience is that if you have those seats available on a Sunday morning when people are traditionally going to church and used to going to a congregation, it increases the chances that more people are going to be there. And so this does give you the opportunity to do that, to have these multiple sites with more available seats for a Sunday morning. I've spoken to this a little bit earlier in referencing both Portland and Santa Barbara. It overcomes geographic barriers when a church facility is landlocked or tightly zoned. This is again something that a lot of our urban congregations are struck with. Some of these congregations are some of our stronger congregations, if you will. They have a good amount of resources, good amount of staff. But beyond going to a third service or something like that, because most of them are already at 2 services, beyond going to a third service, there's really no way to really expand because they don't have the space. And so this allows that to happen. I've been talking to another congregation in the Pacific Southwest District that, again, is landlocked, and they are thinking of a second site only about 15 miles away, but so many of their young families were coming from 15 to 20 miles away in that direction that they figured that might make sense to do that and give them breathing space where they are and to do that. So again, it overcomes that ability. Allows untapped talent to emerge. Again, what this allows us to have a wider range of people in our congregations, a wider range of lay people be participating in leading Sunday morning services. When you use the model where you have multiple services on a Sunday morning, but even if you have the services in midweek, like I know Las Vegas was doing, again, it brings in more people to lead the service and to be working with the minister and understanding what worship is about and to create worship teams that serve not just the one campus but the multiple campuses, so more people can be involved in this aspect of our ministry. It mobilizes volunteers through. I've sort of the same thing I was just saying there. I guess that's sort of a duplicate thing. Added variety of ministry opportunities. And those opportunities may even be different types of outreach programs, because if you're in a different part of the city that you're part of, or a different part of the county where you're located, it might be that particular people that worship at a particular campus will be involved in some outreach project that is near where they are located, as opposed to an outreach project that is centered on the beginning campus. And so, it gives you, it's beyond the worship, it gives you opportunity to do things there. That it also, if you have availability of buildings during the week, building space during the week, it allows you possibly to do other programming, other educational programming and such during the week at that site too. And that expands the volunteer opportunities. Well, this is what they tell me. Congregations that have been involved, it improves the church's stewardship of funds and resources, because in order to do this, you really need to understand clearly where your funding is going and where your resources are going. And the congregations that have done that and have moved into this model have found that their average pledges increase, actually, because people are feeling like that they are moving beyond the four walls that they initially were part of, and that people really do want to be involved in spreading the gospel of Unitarian Universalism. And so when they see congregations that are willing to do this, and if their congregations are willing to do this, and they understand what it's about, we see that the pledges actually increase at that level. It enables the congregation to extend itself in the smaller niches. This is, to me, one of the more exciting aspects of the advantages of multi-site for our Unitarian Universalist ministries. First, San Diego has its second site is in a part of San Diego County, closer to the border, that has a greater diversity of people, large percentage of Latino people, as well as BGLT families in that area. So, I mean, again, it's able to connect to some neighborhoods, be sort of a neighborhood congregation in the way that driving 20 miles north to the bigger campus would not happen. It would not happen. And so for all of our, I've been around long enough to have seen our attempts at supporting multicultural congregations, and we have failed abysmally, in my personal opinion, at really creating congregations that are multicultural or might even be serving a particular ethnic grouping of people who live in a particular neighborhood. We have not done very well at that. But this allows us to move, to sort of walk our talk here in a way that no other model does, because, again, using the resources of that larger congregation, move into these smaller niches and be able to do that. So I think, again, this is also, you might even see a campus ministry as one of these niches that you would move into in your congregation in a way that you might not have thought of earlier. And so there are just different opportunities here for us to move into these other neighborhoods or regions of our urban areas, particularly, and reach out here to these congregations, and creating the other sites and reach out to these neighborhoods. Well, it models and trains people for church planting elsewhere. This is not, again, a strong area of Unitarian Universalist involvement, but in some of the mainstream congregations, they do a better job of training people. But one of the things that we found, and as we talk about this further this evening and next week, as you'll see, I think, is that fewer and fewer congregations are doing the old church planting model of training people to go out and start another congregation elsewhere, because this model has worked so well. One of the statistics that has come out even is that this particular model has a 90% success rate. Now, it's only been around for 15 plus years or so, so we don't have a long time looking at it. But when you compare it to even in the mainstream churches trying to plant a church in another neighborhood or another region, by training people and sending them out, that success rate is at best 50%. Whereas this model so far is that 90% of the congregations that have started this are still going in this particular model. Again, provides a pipeline for development emerging leaders and future staff. Something for people like Nika, who is a theological student who, might want to experience in her congregation as a way of getting some more experience as she moves toward being a minister, fully fellowship minister herself. Okay, this is again, I took this off of some of the resources that are out there in the mainstream congregation, so some of this language may not fit with us, but it shows that basically creating sites that have DNAs, knowing the DNA of your site is important, and what's going to work. So what they have found is that it's important to have the same doctrine. In other words, you can't, one denomination or whatever, one church model can't go on and create something that's different. So, and the vision and mission needs to be pretty much the same. That the pastoral staff meets together regularly. I mean, you may be somebody that's on staff to work primarily with one of the other campuses, but it's important for everybody to meet regularly around this work. One structure of ministry. Again, it's not multiple ministries who are off doing their own thing, but it's just one structure, one board. And again, this, as you can see, of more than 2/3, as I mentioned earlier, even if you have multiple sites and even if you have different ministers preaching at those sites, the same preaching theme, so people are dealing with the same concerns and issues over the same time frame. These are all things that those who have studied the emergence of multi-site have seen as important areas of shaping the multi-site's DNA and creating strong congregations in the multi-site mold. Hope this is making sense. I haven't seen many questions out there. So, going to move on. Disadvantages. Well, it can stretch the budget. You really need to have the resources behind you to do this. And so it could invite criticism from other churches that you're, moving into their territory or whatever. Again, not as much of an issue for Unitarian Universalist congregations, since we're a little more spread out than some of the mainstream congregations are. But it is a possible disadvantage. And it makes new demands on church leadership. I mean, this is key. The church leadership, lay and minister, need to be behind this. And you really need to, have that strong leadership willing to take this on. And enthusiastic, as it says here about it. We did try a sort of, again, one of the things I like about this model is there's no one way. You may have noticed that already, that there's just not one way of doing this. There are different ways of creating this, and as we go through the rest of this week and next week, you'll see some of the broader models that have emerged. We tried a different model, which was having 3 congregations, existing congregations, who were small, mid-size at best, or small to small, mid-size congregations, congregations whose membership range from, I think, like 140 to 260, 3 of them, start a new site in the middle of where the 3 of them would have come together. When we started that project, we had local people that were behind it. We had a minister that was going to be the key person in doing this, and the other ministers were all committed on differing Sundays to rotate out and be there to do some of the preaching. Well, what happened is we realized that the other 3 congregations, while we might have had some energy behind it from the ministers, that the other congregations weren't as strongly behind it, and that the minister that thought he was going to be the key leader had some other things come up in his life and wasn't there. And the whole thing sort of fell back on what I would call a don't mean to offend anybody, but a sort of 1950s lay-led model that basically went downhill from there. I mean, because some of the people that had emerged as the leaders were people that had been UUs back in the 50s and 60s and never really quite grasped what we were trying to do in this community. And so that congregation never emerged. I mean, we learned some things from that, and one of the things that we learned that other congregations that have followed in doing this is that you really need a dedicated staff person to work on this, whether it's volunteer or paid, but somebody that's dedicated to really overseeing the multi-site model. Otherwise, it's not going to fly. And I think that's one of the key learnings we had from this particular failure. So not only is it really something that everybody needs to be behind, not just the people who are going to go to that particular second or third site, but the whole leadership, the whole congregation, and then having somebody whose main role is to oversee all of this. Well, this again is just sort of saying what I said earlier. This is an earlier statistic showing that 7 out of 10 surveyed rated the development as either good or excellent. 23% were still going. They thought it was fair, and only 4% poor. So, I mean, again, it sort of supports that people really generally like this model. 90% of them are still going. At this survey, it said 74% felt good about being part of a second or third site in the congregation they were part of. So, it is a model that's working out there, folks. I guess that's basically it. The congregations that are involved in it see it working. Okay. This again is just to show you that the different numbers of campuses and venues, the blue being the campuses, different campuses, and the gray being different venues. So some of them have multiple venues on the same campus or whatever, but you can see that of the congregations that were surveyed that were moving in the multi-site, the majority had 2 campuses and had 3 venues. So again, it's a model that allows congregations to move beyond just piping the service into a second room on the campus or something like that, to really reach out in a number of ways. And so this just shows the variety of ways that congregations are beginning to reach out. Okay, again, to the teaching preaching model. This is another statistical gathering that somebody done to showed that 46% have people who are on site doing the preaching, 29% do strictly video casts, and 28% do a combination of the two. So again, you see a mix of how people use the resources out there. No one particular way of doing it. And as this model has grown, it's even developed probably different ways of doing this, I say. This was an interesting one. It showed that as these congregations reached out in different areas, that in the socioeconomic area, that the other campuses were 72% of them were somewhat or very different at all campuses. In other words, allow a congregation to reach out into differing neighborhoods in a way that you do not necessarily have when you're sitting there in one site. A broader range of ages, putting campuses in neighborhoods where younger families are, or if you're already in a site where the younger families are, maybe putting one where there's a retirement community, having a site in a retirement community area where people would not travel to where you are. Again, as I said earlier, the ethnic ability to reach out in the various ethnic areas in a community in ways that we haven't been successful at before. This is closer to 50-50. On this particular survey that was done a couple of years ago, again, from what I've read so far, the newer survey that's coming out next month may see that there is the somewhat and very different may have increased on this. Again, marital status. Are you reaching singles? Or if you are primarily, what this is saying is if you are primarily having married people or people who had been married, are you reaching out to the singles or the other way around? So it's saying, well, it wasn't as strong as some of the other areas. Clearly, a good number of the congregations are able to reach out into other areas that they haven't served before. And then language. This, again, is one that I think has probably grown a little in the last couple of years. About a quarter of the congregations were able to reach out in different campuses to different language groups by doing this. So again, this just shows one of the reasons, supports one of the reasons why I'm excited about this for Unitarian Universalists, because it does allow us to sort of walk the talk here about wanting to be broader, wanting to be more diverse than we are. And this model allows us to do this in a way where we use the resources we have and not have to sort of try to spin off a group somewhere else that struggles on their own. Okay, we talked earlier about how far out the sites were. 75% of the new sites are within an hour's drive of the original location. So again, shows that people do not want to travel very far. But if you put a site out near them, they will go. And so we're not necessarily talking about having to create a place that's 50 or 100 miles away. We're talking about creating other sites that are 15 or 20 miles away, as opposed to further than that. And it's working. I mean, I think one of the issues people early on had is they didn't really know whether they could sustain moving out to further to other sites that were relatively close to where they currently are, and it's working to have that. As you can see, most of them are within, as I said, 75% are within 60 minutes of the original site, and so. Okay, this is to give you a sense of how fast this model has grown. 1997 were when the first multi-site congregations were first coming into the public view. There are some people that have said there were multi-sites in the early 90s or late 80s, but most people accept the fact that it was really the late 90s before they really were called multi-sites and were recognized as this model. In 2001, it had grown to 200 multi-site congregations. In 2006, it had grown to 1,500. By the report that came out in 2008 headed up to 3,000. I think one I read in 2010 said there were about 5,000 at that stage, and the report that's coming out next month is saying that there are now 8,000 multi-sites. Now compare this to the mega congregation, something that some UUs have studied the mega congregations and said we need to learn from them and we need to model some of our larger congregations after the mega congregations. There are only 1,500 mega congregations across the whole United States. So there's more than 3 times as many multi-sites now as there are mega congregations. So clearly, this model has taken off in a way that even for mainstream the mega churches were a big deal, and they are a lot of, there are several, 10 or 20,000 member congregations out there that people like to look at and study and whatever. But this model has so far outstripped the number of congregations participating and even the number of people that it's reaching, in a way that the multi-sites haven't. And in some ways, some of this multi-site is a reaction to those that really rejected being part of the mega congregations. There are particularly younger generations are not as interested in being part as some of the baby boomers were in the mega churches, and they're much more comfortable being on a smaller campus of a multi-site congregation than they are otherwise. And so, this is I think it's it's growing, it's going, and it's something that I think that as you've heard me say all night here, that this is a model that I think we can really adapt to our needs. The multi-site, these are quotes from some people out there. The multi-site movement is transforming the church landscape across the nation. It is no longer a trend, but the new normal for healthy, growing churches of all sizes. Some of the statistics I saw around some of this were saying that 50%, I think it was 50% of the congregations who had moved into this model had seen within the first 6 months or so dramatic growth. Here's 43% said they experienced a growth of over 50% in attendance in their first year. 16% experienced the same growth in the second year. So I'm not going to say that Unitarian Universalists necessarily fit that, but the people that have studied multi-site across the continent, across the board, have said that is what's happening out there. There's a evangelical magazine called Outreach Magazine that each year publishes an edition of the 100 largest and fastest growing congregations. And this last year, it said that the common denominators of those 100 are multi-site, small groups, and community engagement. Small group ministries, which we are doing and struggling with in the Unitarian Universalist congregations, being out there in the community, connecting to the community, two things we say we are already trying to do, and multi-site. Those are the things that fit the fastest growing congregations out there. That's what's happening out there across the country on this. So, okay. So now we get to the hard questions, and is multi-site really right for you? Again, we don't want to. I think too often we jump into the new fad, like we learned with this particular one that we didn't work that I described to you earlier. We've got excited about creating a new model of multi-site and doing that, and I don't know that we've really looked at it strong enough. So, want you to take let's see what we got left. We got about 15 minutes left, so we'll work our way through these as slowly as we can to see what you think, and maybe particularly those of you that are sitting together, is your church growing at least 5% a year? If you want to respond to this by writing and telling the rest of us, you can, or if you just want to think about it for a minute. Is your church facility 80% full at optimal inviting hours? In other words, if your service between 9 and 12, services between 9 and 12, your main service that you have now, is at 80% full at optimal inviting hours. This is the statistics that most Unitarian Universalists are familiar with, because it's one that we've been using to say you need to go to a second service if you're here. But they're also saying, the people that have studied multi-site saying, if you're at this point, it's an explore the option of a multi-site, whether it's on your existing campus or elsewhere. Is your church meeting resistance to campus expansion due to zoning rules, environmental concerns, or traffic congestion? Again, here, the congregations that are landlocked, where do you move, or where do you go beyond that and use your resources? Here's the opportunity. Does your church have a good reputation in the community? Again, are you connected to the community in such a way that you are already known, so that if you start another site somewhere else in the community, people are going to know who you are to some degree. And that's what this is asking. Is that true? Are you connected in the community in such a way that's... Do you want to release more people into high-impact, meaningful ministry? Are you looking for things for people to be doing? Are there more people that want to be involved in the diversity of ministries that you offer? And do you want to launch new congregations in your region that are healthy, sustainable, and reproductive? Again, I borrow these questions from the people that have studied this and done this. I'm not sure I would have probably should have changed the language on this one a little, but because I think the core of this is not to start a different congregation, but to serve the broader Unitarian Universalist tradition and faith by having a existing congregation meet in multiple venues, multiple campuses. This model hasn't been there long enough, I think, to see whether or not some of those other campuses create and become their own congregations down the road. But there might be. You want to be more accessible? Does your church want to be more accessible? Again, these are questions that go back to the earlier sharings that I was having with you about, are people in your congregation, your leadership, really committed to reaching out for Unitarian Universalism in your region beyond where you are? Do you want to do it in an efficient and cost-effective way compared to the other models that we know that we've tried? This fits that. That's another thing that really excites me about it is that, yes, it will cost you a little bit more money and it'll cost you more volunteer time as well as ministerial time in order to do this, in order to be free to do this. But in the long run, this is going to be the most cost-effective way to really grow Unitarian Universalism. Is your church out there? This is not a way, this is stressed over and over again in the literature, that this is not a way to solve a conflict within the congregation about different styles or whatever. You need to have a healthy congregation that's willing to move into the next iteration of what it wants to be in its ministry. Would you like to merge or be merged with another local church? This again is the model that's more recent. When we first started looking at multi-site, it was really existing congregations creating other sites. Now there's an increasing number of smaller congregations that are connecting with more stable, healthy congregations to be one congregation now. They've given up their boards. They've given up having their own ministers in many cases to have they've hung on to their locale maybe where they are if they had a building or a particular rental site, but they have not but they have given everything else, the governance and everything, to the stable congregation. And so this is again another model that I think, another aspect of multi-site that we need to look at. I think when I am on a team that our congregational life staff has created. Scott Taylor is our new director, and he's created a team to look at multi-site. And I'm part of that team. And it was interesting that the folks from the Northeast, the couple of people who were from the East Coast Northeast regions, were saying that this is what interests them the most, that to merge or be merged with another congregations, because they do have so many congregations with buildings that have shrunk, since their building went up in the 18th or 19th century, and so they're interested in this model, particularly back there. But I've also seen other congregations exploring it across the continent. So if you can answer yes to any of these questions, I'm not sure I would say any. If you can I would say if you can answer yes to at least several of these questions, your church is a good candidate for going multi-site. Okay. Some of these, I don't know, Laurie, we had talked about making these available to people on print, and I guess maybe we can work on that this week and send them out. So some other questions going in a different direction. What is the dream? Okay, these now are specific to, okay, so you've agreed that with the other questions that we just went through that, yeah, you're set to be multi-site. This will work for you. But first of all, what do we have clarity about the dream, the vision, about why you're doing multi-site? Is there clarity around that? What is essential to your brand? I mean, who you are as a congregation. What is your style of ministry? What are you known for? what's essential to you there. What's your organizational structure? I would go beyond that and say, what is your governance even? Is your organizational structure and your governance would this allow you to move into this model, or do you have to look at that? Because again, one of the things that can block a congregation from moving into this model is if its organizational structure and governance really doesn't allow for it to happen, because you're too rigid in certain areas. You need to have the ability to move into this. Your leadership farm system, something we're working on. There's going to be for those of you in the PSWD, there's going to be a workshop at our district assembly on moving beyond nominating committees into leadership teams that in essence create that farm system for a congregation. And I think that's a newer model, particularly here in the Pacific Western region, we're looking at and promoting. Do you have a plan for artist development? Now, this is again coming off some of the mainstream congregations that even have in part of their services people who do artistic things, whether it's dance or whether it's drawings or whatever it is. They integrate that into this, and it works pretty well with the video venues and such. And so funding in place. Again, you can't go at it without having some clarity about, okay, what are the extra funds going to cost? Are we going to have to I'll get to that, Nick. Is your funding in place? Do you have it enough for rent for a year or two for the additional site? Nick has asked what the farm system is. The farm system is like I was just saying. I think it's do you have a way in which you are integrating new people into leadership? And that's what the newer model that we're dealing with here in the Pacific Western region, that Nancy Bowen is sort of the lead person on, is moving beyond nominating committees that go out, that work together for a few weeks and twist arms to get people into leadership roles, to a leadership team that works year-round on helping to develop leadership with new people, helping them to get to workshops, to do a leadership school and things like that. So they're ready to step into leadership in a particular congregation and not just leave leadership to chance of a nominating committee twisting arms for a couple of weeks once a year. Did that get at it? Okay. And how are you going to maintain the alignment? That means who is going to be responsible for making sure this is going to be functioning well? And this is, I think, speaks to what I was saying earlier, that the lesson that we learned in that model that did not work is you really need somebody that's looking at the alignment of how it's working, where do we need to stop and assess what's going on, what's happening. Are we going in the direction we said we were going to go in? Are people understanding that this is one congregation with different sites? All of that. There needs to be somebody that is there to make sure all of that's in alignment. Okay, I'm going to run through this real quick. 4 decisions to make up front. What level of autonomy will the sites have? This is again, how many people are you going to say that are basically out there in that site primarily and doing that work, or is it part of a team? And decisions are all made with a team at the team level, who would provide oversight of the multi-site effort. Again, reiterating what I've been saying for the last several minutes, having somebody that does that. How are you going to deliver the message? Again, is it going to be video? Is it going to be a person? Is it going to be a mix? And what core ministries will you offer at the multiple sites? Is it going to be basically a Sunday service, or is it something else that you're going to be doing? So these are, again, things that you need to go over, and we'll try to make these available. And maybe if we have time next week, I can, if you have questions about these, we can review them again next week. So we got a couple minutes left. Are there any burning questions that came up while I ran through this presentation this evening? I knew it was going to be tight on our time frame there, so if you got questions, you got to type them in because and I'm not seeing anything pop up, so I think I'm going to move on.
Hey, Ken, this is Lori.
Yeah. Go ahead, Lori.
And my chat box for some reason is kind of frozen, and so I'm wondering if that happened to other people as well. So if anybody's really wanting to ask a question, you can go up to that mood button if your chat is not working, and you can put your hand up. Just hover over the button on the top that says My Mood, and then raise your hand, and I can try unmuting you, and we can just see if that works or not.
See, I don't know.
All right. Yeah, nice.
My hand came up next to my name there. It's that mood thing up in the middle central part of the thing, and
if not, then very good. Then we'll see if there's then you don't have any more questions, and you're welcome to go on to the next part.
So the second part of the series, where I'm going to go in more detail about the three different models I'm familiar with within Unitarian Universalist congregations. And so that's primarily what we're going to do, as well as have some more time for you to, if after tonight you go back and talk to people and you got questions that you want to bring back, we'll deal with them next week as well. And so that will be what we will be doing next week, is doing more detail on that. And Laurie, I don't know, we could put my email up there. Our people know my email. The easiest one, I guess, is my UUA one, which is kbrown, KBROWN @UUA.org. There we go. Thank you. If there are questions that come up during the week, please write them to me, and then we can try to deal with them next week too. And so that's one way. If after thinking this over, you have some specific questions that come up, or if there's some specific things you want us to deal with next time, drop me a note, and we will go there. So thank you all for hanging in there this evening. It's good to see the names have been there the whole time. So I think we've all stayed together here. And we have a survey that will, I think it pops up when the meeting is closed, as I recall, and as well as a follow-up email will be sent, and it helps Laurie and us sort of look at how we're doing with this. Laurie's our genius behind our ability to do this in the Pacific Western region, but it's still a relatively new thing. We're still getting into it and trying to figure out how to best make these presentations work, and so we'd love your feedback. And so as we extinguish our chalice this evening, I'm going to pull something that I have on my iPad out from Pema Chandran, and that I think as we are, looking to the creation of new life within our Unitarian Universalist congregations, this one struck me. Life is a good teacher and a good friend. Things are always in transition, if we could only realize it. Nothing ever sums itself up in the way that we like to dream about. The off-center, in-between state is an ideal situation, a situation in which we don't get caught and we can open our hearts and minds beyond limit. It is a very tender, non-aggressive, open-ended state of affairs. And so for me, as we explore the possibilities of multi-site ministry, I try to keep before me that this is not going to be perfect no matter which way we go, and that we be open to the change and the transitions that this will create in our congregations, because there is a vision of spreading the word of Unitarian Universalism. So thank you. And as we extinguish our chalice, good evening, and hope to see you all next Tuesday as well.